Hey everybody, today we're going to learn how to do a retro badge using Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to create an effect such as the badge you see right here in front of you. So to get started, we have to kind of understand retro badges and understand what we need. And one of the biggest thing with retro badges is that they're really a lot out there. And if I just Google retro badges here and go to my Google Images, you'll see there are quite a few, to say the least, out there on the market. And they're all sorts of different qualities, but the majority have basic similarities, whether it is shape, line, repetition of dashes, stars, ribbons, things like that, vintage typography. So what I've gone ahead and already done here for my badge is I've already found a nice typeface that I'm going to work with, and I found those typefaces in a few places, one of which is Lost Type. Lost Type is a great free typeface resource where you can browse typefaces and find some really nice, amazing typefaces. The other one is Font Squirrel, and Font Squirrel, if I could actually spell it, is a great one too because it lets us kind of search for these retro typefaces right away, and you'll see there's quite a few options there as well. So I have a few typefaces that I've downloaded that I like here, one of which is Lavendria and the other is Fairview, and they seemingly fit kind of my idea that I have here. And so we're going to kind of deconstruct this piece and kind of build it one step at a time using some basic Illustrator techniques, and you're going to find that it's a little easier than you may have thought. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and move my badge here off to the side, and we're going to start with this shape right here. And this shape is kind of off in a sense. It's not really a circle and it's not really a star. It's kind of a in-between of the two. So what we need to do is try to find a way to do this. Now, there's multiple ways to do things in Illustrator. Of course, what we could do is actually simply just draw it from scratch if need be. Well, I want to try to streamline this badge creation in a nice uniform way. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the star tool. Now, if I draw a star and I'm just clicking and dragging, you can see I get kind of a wild star. And if I hit my up and down arrows, that star drastically changes as I go. So you can see here, I have the original star, I hit the up arrow, it adds more points, and so forth. And that's really nice, but you can see there's really not a lot of space in between, and plus we have rounded edges. So how exactly did I do that? Well, I used my star tool, I clicked once, and I put some settings in. And here you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I have about 18 points. So I'm going to go ahead and type 18 in. And I used my radius here. And I'm going to put that radius to 1 and keep this one to about 1.3. Now this is a kind of give and take kind of feel, but when I hit OK, you'll see I get pretty close-knit edges and triangles. But one of the big problems I still have is I still have those sharp edges. Now, again, we're an Illustrator. We can go through and we can use tools, such as the pen tool to try to round it out, or we could grab it with our select arrow and round each one of those out. That could take quite a long time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my effect tool, and I'm going to distort this, and let's see, I'm going to go to stylize, and I'm going to hit rounded corners. And I'm going to hit preview here, and you can see immediately at 5 inches here, it gives me a nice kind of good round edge going on. So I'm going to hit OK here, and that's great, that's good to keep, and I'm going to go ahead and expand my appearance here just so I have a little bit of workability. Now the next step I need to do is I need to make that curved line. Now rather than trying to match this up, it's a very easy step. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste in front. Now, when I paste in front, my current black background of the badge here doesn't have a stroke, and I'm going to just switch these, and I'm going to create a white stroke. There we go. All right. Now, what I end up having, and I'm going to move this out of the way for a second so you can see, is I end up having two pieces. I have a white stroke and I have a regular one. And what's happening is they're right on top of each other. And that's great. But again, if I scale down, you can see that I have the ability to kind of take that stroke and pull it inward. And so that's really nice too. The other easy way you can do to create this, and I'm going to delete that I just made, is use some of Illustrator's great tools. I'm going to go to Path under Object, and I'm going to offset my path. Now, as of anything in Illustrator, what we really need to do is we really need to have specific things selected. So I'm going to go to my main view here, and I'm going to make sure that this backdrop is selected, this black shape I've made. And I'm going to go to Path, Offset Path. And I'm going to look here and say, okay, what I want to do here. And it looks like I want to kind of offset it. I'm going to do a negative number, so hopefully that shrinks it in. And what that will do, if I've done it right, is shrink it in. Now, what we still have to do, being that it's Illustrator, is I have to play around with the arrangement still. And I'm going to bring this to the front. And I'll look around here and you'll see, well, there it is. But it didn't really shrink it in too much. You can see here, it's in there. So let's go back a few steps. Let's make sure we don't have anything in the background there. Try it one more time and let's put a higher number in. So offset path, and for the heck of it, let's do like 5. Okay, so you can see 5 is going the wrong way here, and we'll do maybe -10. There we go. Could even probably go further than this, guys. Let's do -20. And hit OK. There it is. And I'll go ahead and put a white stroke on this so I can see it. And I can take this stroke off the backdrop, so just to save some space. Now I'm going to go ahead and make this slightly larger, maybe to a 2 so we can see it. And we're starting to get our main view kind of in the works here, almost like a clamshell feel to it. All right, now that I have that, I'm ready to work on some other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and activate my ruler by hitting Command R, and I'm going to basically draw ruler guides, and I'm going to eyeball this, but I'm going to go toward the center of the shape here, and I have even numbers of things, so of clamshell shapes, so to speak, so it gives me kind of a nice feel to it. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to go to my rounded rectangle tool, and I'm going to make sure I go down one more to ellipse, and I'm going to place my center guide in the middle. And when I hold down the Alt and the Shift key, I'm going to constrain and I'm going to drag an item from there. So a little piece from there. I'm going to make sure I have white. Oops. Make sure I put that on the stroke to match my original. And this one, I'm thinking maybe like 3. I want it a little thicker as it goes in. Okay, we're going to do that one more time. So I'm going to hold Alt, and I get this kind of target look feel, and it's going to say center, and I'm going to pull that out from the center. And this one I want to have a dashed line. So to make a line dashed, I go to the stroke attribute, and I select dashed line. And if I want little circles, actually we'll put a lower number here and less of a gap. So totally delete that gap there so you guys can see. That'll give me little circles. No gaps kind of tend to do that. And in my case here, I'm going to do maybe 1 gap, and I'm going to just play around with these numbers to get something that's a little closer than I want. Maybe like 6. That's a little nicer. Maybe 0.5. Let's see if they'll let me do that. Yeah, I kind of dig that. It's a little different than my original, but you know, why not? We'll keep things fun and exciting. So we have this kind of dashed kind of feel to it all of a sudden, so that's kind of nice. And if we ever want to change that, all we have to do is go back and simply change our numbers in there, and you know, we'll really get what we wanted there, and we can, you know, add as many spaces or whatnot between them as we wish here. So kind of a fun thing, and really kind of cool to play around with, and it's really easy to play around with. There's really nothing that bad with it. I'm going to lower my stroke size while I'm in here, maybe not to 1, maybe to like 2, and that gives me something pretty close. All right, now that I have that, I need to make sure that, and you can see this is really easy, I need to make sure that my vintage type is already typed out, so I'm going to get my text tool, and I'm going to just keep my type up here and type the word vintage. And I'm going to scale it up because it's vector. We're allowed to kind of free transform some stuff. And that's going to be used for later. I'm going to actually put it over here in our store bin. And I'm going to set this to white. So we'll just use that tool, set it to white, save that for later. And I'm going to work with my other type, which was Fairview, and get that typed out into established. Oops, a little close there to the original. Down here. est.2014. Alright, scale that up. That's kind of cool, but I really like Fairview for this, so I'll type Fairview. And I like regular for the established. That looks awesome. Alright, so this stuff is ready to go, and we'll put that into the scene there near the end and add our finishing touches. So I like the scale right there. Alright. So now I'm going to work on my ribbon. Now I have a couple options for my ribbon. Ribbons are really, really easy to make. What we can do to make ribbons, and I'm going to pull some color in so you guys can see, or at least some gray value. Ribbons I can essentially start to make by hand. And I'm going to start with the rectangle tool. And I'm going to hop over and go to my pen tool. And I'm going to kind of create a ribbon-esque feel. There we go. Oops, make sure I close that point. That's when the little circle shows up. And the great thing about this is it really allows me to kind of adjust tonal range and value and whatnot. I'm going to hold the Alt key down to duplicate this. And I'm going to use the ability that Illustrator gives us to pull things in the front and back of items. So I'm going to send this actually to the back. And I'm going to darken this slightly as well. Maybe even pull a little reddish tone into it. There we go. So you can see making these ribbons is not really hard. It's just a matter of breaking things down into simple shapes. There we go. That looks pretty good. I'm going to grab all these items. I'm going to hit Command G or Object, and I'm going to, or excuse me, Edit Group, and I'm going to group these together. And by grouping these together, it really is going. There's Object Group. Sorry. It's really going to allow me to kind of play around with the shape. Now, to get this shape to look right, I'm going to use the Reflect tool. And I'm going to simply click on an area, and nothing happens. And that's the problem with some of these tools in Illustrator. They can be confusing. If I hold my Option key down, let me select this group again. There we go. I get a little minus sign. That will actually give me the reflect. And instead of reflecting it, I'm going to hit Copy, and that will give me a really nice kind of ribbon shape. It's not exactly complete. I still have to kind of deal with some area here. But you can see definitely getting there. I kind of dig it. I can start moving these items. I can send them to the back to make them look like it's wrapped around. Arrange, send to back. And really start to play around with these items as we see it. And maybe we'll push it up a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. All right, so we have some options there. Now, another option, and we're going to kind of go back here and pull this back down. Oops, I'm going to redo that reflect there. Is we can actually take that cube. So let's draw that out. And we can try to make the ribbon that you see ahead of us. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool. I'm going to hit I on my keyboard and just sample that color. And I'm going to try to bulge this in the shape of the ribbon that you see here. And not too hard of an effect, but we do have the warp tool and we do have the bulge. We have the arcs and whatnot. I'm going to start with the bulge. That will give me two-sided bulges. Maybe go to the arc. That one's not too bad. I personally drew mine with the pen tool. It was a little easier to kind of play around with, and it let me play with the distortion, but I like that kind of non-symmetrical feel to it, so I'm kind of digging that. I'm going to go ahead and expand that appearance and drag that on and just kind of rotate it. Obviously the scale needs some work here and whatnot. There we go. Alright, now the easiest way to do this though is once we bulge this is to go ahead and make sure we finish up the item down here. So I'm going to get my pen tool again. And just like I kind of did on the other one, I'm going to draw just kind of a cube. Play around with this cube and get my selection tools and kind of pull these upward. That looks kind of cool. Put a spot right in the middle. If I could find the middle there, there we go. I think it's right there. That looks good. And I'm going to pull that in. Awesome. Pull that back a little bit. I have my snapping on here, and I'm kind of too lazy to move it, so I'm going to keep kind of stick with this. And I'm going to take this here, just do kind of my own personal reflect. Kind of put it in, make sure it's moved to the back. And kind of use my arrow keys to nudge it out a little bit more, and that's going to really kind of help. And you'll find it's really, really quite easy to make your own custom shapes. We do want to make sure that we have that value range still going in there. Use the eyedropper tool if need be, and sample your colors. But overall, not too hard to kind of get a really cool looking badge going on. So I'm going to move these up, and I'm going to rotate this as we go. Make sure I bring this to the front here. So arrange, bring to front. Kind of put that there. A little bit bigger. Play with that a little bit. My scale's a little different than my original. And I'm going to go ahead and hide my ruler guides here. I don't really need those ruler guides anymore. So there we go. Just kind of pull them off to the side and delete them. Always forget I'm not in Photoshop, and Illustrator does things a little more differently. And I'm going to take the word vintage, and I'm going to kind of place that there. Again, need to bring it to the front. We're dealing with that a little bit. Shrink it down slightly. Give it a little more of a tilt. I kind of like the tilt I gave it on the first one, so I'm going to try to mimic that. And take my established and put it down. And now I'm just kind of playing with scale and playing with placement and where it would be on the scene. I really made this stroke rather easily. I got the white arrow, the pen tool with white in it, and I just basically drew out a nice little stroke. Kind of played with that a little bit, and just kind of gave it that nice feel. And again, if I think at any point this isn't big enough, I just highlight those items, kind of pull them up a little bit, and play that way. Now the last step I did was kind of add that drop shadow effect to it. Now most likely I would take this into Photoshop and really play with this a lot more and add texture and more feel to it. But you know, honestly, that's kind of another tutorial in itself. We would bring it in as a smart object, but we could really just finish this up really quickly by adding a quick drop shadow to the text, which is under our stylize, where we found our rounded corners, and drop shadow. And I tend to like to hit the preview, and I have the X offset. I don't want that to be offset too much, so I put that to 0, and I put it just slightly to Y, and I went ahead and took off my blur because I like that. It was kind of nice, and I'm going to turn down my opacity just slightly here, just a little bit, maybe 10%, 15% less, and that really was nice. Now, I can do the same thing with all these other elements too. If you want to try to attempt to select some of these items, like the ribbon, and see what the drop shadow does for you, go ahead and try. The worst case scenario is that you just don't use it anymore, and it's, you know, oh well, you're kind of out of luck at that point, but not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and hit preview here. You can see me playing around with it. Oops, wrong way. Alright, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to hit OK. And I need to send these back so they take that drop shadow a little bit, and that's kind of nice. Send it back again. I think that was enough. I think I caught the drop shadow. Yep, just a little bit. And that kind of gives me a little more feel. Now, if any point you want to change those drop shadows, you simply select it, go and find your appearance editor, click on drop shadow, and then go ahead and kind of rinse and repeat the same steps. It's a lot easier for that and for you to kind of get this accomplished. Another thing people will do is they'll have the addition of a stroke, and the strokes are actually really nice to add on here. They'll pick maybe a darker color of some sort, just something to kind of break it up and kind of give it that kind of feel to it. But basically, that's how you make a vintage badge, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and you go ahead and try your own techniques and add your own flair to your badges, and I will catch you next time.